بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة للمتقين وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. So I made a couple of short posts recently talking about the need for men to be strong, right? The importance of men connecting with their masculinity instead of some non-existent, fabled feminine side. And I've been on this little thing because there is definitely a connection between strengthening oneself physically and one's iman. I'm not saying that there's a direct causation, but there is undoubtedly some correlation. Iman is far more complicated than just simply being in good shape and being a purely causation. Obviously, that's not true. But there is a correlation. And so I wanted to explore a little further the concept of strength, particularly for men, because sometimes it's misunderstood. So, like I said, there's the horrible advice of telling men to get in touch with their feminine side, which this is a kind of an unnecessary, ridiculous statement. But rather, we should talk about the various forms and applications of strength, particularly as men. And so I'm going to just relate one hadith here as it relates to that. Because I think it's important that obviously in all this conversation, we want to make sure that we are situating our understanding of manhood and womanhood, masculinity, all those things. We want to make sure that we are situating them that is within the Book of Allah and also, of course, according to the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, and so that it can reconcile with that. And so I'm going to relate a hadith. It's reported, you can find both in Al-Bukhari and Imam Muslim in his collection of hadith as well. So it is often referred as muttafiq alayh, right? It's agreed upon in both of these major collections of hadith. And it is reported by Abu Huraira that he says there's a man whose name was Al-Aqra bin Habis. Al-Aqra bin Habis. Now, man kana Aqra bin Habis? Who was Al-Aqra bin Habis? He was a person of some distinction amongst the Arabs and held kind of a cultural, social position, particularly before the advent of Islam. So it's related that, for instance, that Al-Aqra, right, that he said, كان يحكم بين العرب في كل موسم حتى جاء الإسلام. That Al-Aqra was somebody that used to kind of function as a kind of judge, right? Again, people will come for him to either make for some kind of hukm or qada, right? And so he was a person that was seen as trustworthy. He was a person whose opinion was sought and he was respected. However, and this is where it's important, right, that we have our cultural notions of things, but we must always attenuate our cultural notions of things according to the Book of Allah and the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And many of you will probably already be familiar with this hadith. And it's so again, Abu Huraira reports that Al-Aqra radiyallahu anhu, he said, أبصر النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم يقبل Al-Hasan. So he reports that Al-Aqra ibn Habs, he saw the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam one day kiss his grandson Al-Hasan radiyallahu anhu. فقال إن لي عشرة من الولد وما قبلت من واحد منهم. And so he says to them that, kind of astounded, I got 10 kids. I ain't never kissed none of them, right? And of course, this is where the al-jawab in the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam mashhuran, what he said, what innahu man la yarham la yurham. Innahu man la yarham la yurham. So the Prophet ﷺ responded to Al-Aqra saying that and this is very interesting. You look at the way that the Prophet ﷺ responds to him. He doesn't say, get in touch with your feminine side. Obviously, he responds by saying, the one that doesn't show mercy will not have mercy shown to him. Right? His response, alayhi salatu salam, the one that does not show mercy, mercy will not be shown to him. And so he understands, obviously, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because in some ways this attitude of Al-Aqra radiallahu an, it wasn't really astounding to the Prophet ﷺ. He understood his people very, very well. And so he kind of had the tough guy, like, no, you don't do that. You don't go, you're not a real man. You're not a tough guy walking around kissing children. And of course, the Prophet ﷺ, كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ, right? That the Prophet ﷺ is indeed the excellent example for us. And so he also, however, though, doesn't say that you shouldn't be strong. And this is what I'm saying about, and I put in the little top, right, the multiple applications of strength. I think it's important for men to understand, and actually women too, because sometimes women, we hear all about mansplaining. Well, often there's womansplaining to men as well about how a man should be. And I think there's a misconception by both men and women about men being gentle. That being gentle is either the opposite of being strong, or if I can fabricate a word here, the disapplication of strength. Meaning that either strength is like, in this misconception, strength is often thought of as something like a light switch. When it's time to be strong, you turn it on, and when it's not time to be strong, it's turned off. And so in the off mode, you can be gentle. This, in my opinion, and again, just looking at the way that the Prophet ﷺ was, is somewhat of a misconception. That no, being strong is, or rather being gentle is not the turning off of one's capacity for strength. It is just simply redirecting it in a different way. And it might even be able to, you could say, it kind of has a sort of like, almost in a way that you can have a verb that is a transitory verb, right? That it has a direct object, right? That your strength, instead of it being, like if you want to pick up a heavy object, then you're going to utilize that strength inside yourself to pick up said heavy object. But in a moment, right, to be gentle and to be loving and caring, to your child or to your grandchild, and to hug them and kiss them and, that kind of thing, that you're actually conferring the same power and strength you have now onto the so-called direct object, onto the, in this case of the Prophet ﷺ, conferring that upon Al-Hasan radiallahu anhu. And I think this is important because men should generally be strong. And I've been kind of on this little thing lately about, right, particularly like going back to basics and feeling strong in your body. And that's important. And that if you can do so, and of course, not in a vacuum, right? Becoming strong, but what? Staying connected to the Book of Allah, staying connected to the Prophet ﷺ, that inner physical strength that you have, you can now use that in a way that you can affect the world around you in a very positive way. And so it is not when one is being gentle, when one is being compassionate, when one is being caring as a man, that is actually the same strength. And that's why I mentioned in the little video earlier, I'm not advocating for a kind of trope of, strong men where all men should fit into this uniform idea of being, some lumberjack guy that goes out in the woods and wrestles bears. That's not what I'm advocating for, right? Some men will be, very tactile like that. I said some men may be somewhat cerebral, and you'll have some men who are, that will be a composite or a hybrid of these. And so instead of trying to fabricate a kind of uniformity that every single man should adhere to, rather, I see that there is a more of a continuity, right, that can run through the many different striations and different types of men. And I think that that is the benefit of that's the benefit of I think of the Prophet ﷺ being that uswa hasana, of the Prophet ﷺ being that great example for us, is that he can then teach any man, whether that man is soft or whether that man is hard, whether that man is a traditional, whatever, that he can teach him the application of that strength that he has to affect the world around him, right, in a positive way. So I just wanted to put that out there to give a little bit of depth and context to what I've been talking about, why I've been posting so many videos about fitness and exercise and, men, being strong, because it isn't only about the physical transformation of the body. I mean, that's good for many things, but there are some goals and applications beyond that. So just putting that out there, inshallah. My cat is mean mugging me. I think he wants to go outside, so we're going to have to wrap this up. وصلوات الله تعالى على النبي الكريم وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. السلام عليكم.